So the SDR team, it sits in various organizations at different companies. At LinkedIn, it sits in operations, and that means it sits between sales and marketing. And so one of the things that makes it really, what's made us really successful, at least, is having the strong cross-functional collaboration with both our marketing partners and sales partners, and that's like super important to get right, because if you're not on the same page, your operations, and then also the way that you measure the business. And also just how you are coordinated, you're going to become uncoordinated if you're not on the same page. So that's super important. I feel like many times that's not prioritized in other companies. So the partnership has been super important.
I'm Devin Reed.
And I'm Sheena Badani.
And you're watching Reveal, the Revenue Intelligence podcast powered by Gong.
Keep watching here to see the full interview. Or if you like to listen to podcasts on the go, check out the links in the description below.
And if you like what you hear, subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or all of them. Why not? And while you're there, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. We personally read every single one, and I think I speak for both of us when I say they mean the world to us.
Could not agree more, Devin. Now, without further ado, here's the episode you've been waiting for.
Hi, everybody. We're here today with Lekha Doshi, who is the VP of Global Operations at LinkedIn. Welcome, Lekha.
Thank you.
It's super exciting to have Lekha here today. We actually have worked together, and I have almost followed some of your footsteps in the past. It's kind of funny. So we were both at Cal together. We were both at Bain together. And then I have a very fond memory when we were at Bain, you had applied and just gotten into HBS.
Yes.
And then I remember congratulating you, and I was really impressed and amazed that you got in. And then I remember your response to me was that it'll happen to you too. And I was like, no, whatever, it's not gonna happen. We'll see, she's just being nice. But I have a very fond memory of that and how you kind of handled that, and that it actually did come true. And then I followed your footsteps again after that, so.
Thanks, congratulations. Well deserved. I knew it the whole time.
So VP of Global Operations, can you help us understand what that means and what it means to you?
Yeah, sure. So I partner really closely with our sales organization to operate our teams. We have a global team of over 5,000 sellers here at LinkedIn. And so as you can imagine, there's a lot that goes behind the scenes on making sure things run smoothly and that we're hitting our growth targets and we're doing things more efficiently and, making the right investments across the organization. So ops to me is a few different things. It's strategy around thinking around the long term. How are we going to pull together this massive, asset base, our people, to hit some of our strategic goals. And so it's a long-term vision, 3 to 5 years usually. So that's one piece of the work that we do. Then there's the operational, which is day-to-day, keeping a pulse on the business, making sure things run on time. And then anything that comes on our plates when it comes to changes that are occurring in the organization. New product launches, new ways to think about organizing our teams. That's what my teams are involved in.
So you've been at LinkedIn for quite some time, 7 years, I think, to be exact, which is a long time in today's world, right? People are always hopping around B2B tech companies. So LinkedIn is a great company, respected, having worked there and then even from the outside. But would love to hear a little bit about what has kept you there at LinkedIn and what's made you loyal to the company.
Yeah, I have been there a long time. So I think at LinkedIn, 7.5 years is considered like dinosaur realm. So I have been there a long time. And I would say it's such an easy decision every day for me to go into work and stay at LinkedIn. There's a few reasons that I've loved working at LinkedIn. One, first and foremost, the mission and the vision. I mean, it's really hard not to get behind our vision of creating economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. It's pretty inspiring, and one in which, it's with the assets that we have on our platform, we can actually do it. And so that's definitely a really good reason to go into work every day. The second is the people. The people are amazing, and you can probably attest to that as someone that's worked there. The people are, we have a really strong culture, and our culture is also built on a strong set of values. So I feel really lucky going to work every day, working with essentially my friends, and then also people that are really principled in their decision making. And so it just feels really good as far as, you may not agree with everything that's done, but you feel like the why behind why we're doing things at LinkedIn makes total sense.
That's great. And if I'm sure, like, as you are there at the company, you're helping to create and build that culture and instill that in new team members. How do you get them bought into the vision and bought into the way of doing things, and maybe even sussing that out when you're looking for new folks on your team? Trying to interview for cultural fit is always a hard thing, right? It's so hard. And you might also fall into the trap of actually your own internal biases, because the natural way to actually get folks that have a good cultural fit is just actually to get referrals from people within our own company. Yeah. So that is actually something that I struggle with, actually, as I'm thinking about growing my team and getting folks from a variety of different backgrounds. Like, how do you, the bar for getting the cultural fit piece right during an interview process is actually really hard. Once folks actually get to LinkedIn, it's actually pretty easy to really explain our mission, our vision, and then also how do we actually, what we do every day and our priorities actually ladder up to that. But the cultural and value piece is like really hard, and you can only really test people's cultural fit when they get to the company, and then you have to make some talent decisions pretty quickly based on what you see. I think it's like a two-way street too. Even for a candidate, or for when you are looking for a new role, you can see what the culture of a company is from the outside, but it means something completely different once you're there and living and breathing it. So I think it's definitely like a two-way conversation and interaction that you discover over time.
Totally. And I think that's why in the beginning, it's one of our tenets is relationships matter. And so one of the things that we encourage all our new employees to do in the beginning is, rather than just like onboarding on the stuff that you need to learn to get up to speed on your day-to-day work, is actually spend some time just meeting people, because relationships do matter, and like you're going to get a lot done, and that way. And also it's a good way to onboard on how do we operate here? What are our cultural values? And if you spend that time investing in relationships, you can get that done.
Yeah. So before LinkedIn, you were at Bain,
Yes.
Which is a management consulting firm for those who are not familiar. How did your experience at Bain help establish your approach to go-to-market and strategy at LinkedIn?
So Bain is an amazing place to work. Let me just start by saying that it's a great training ground. I feel really fortunate to have had the opportunity to work there for as long as I did. I worked there for about 5 years. And it has helped me tremendously with just my current role and just every role that I've had since then. There's a few things. One is it's a very data-driven culture. Very similar to LinkedIn, actually. There's a ton of Bainies that actually work at LinkedIn. And so it's given me the toolkit to analyze data, to communicate insights, to actually glean insights. So I'm really I feel like that toolkit's really important to make the right decisions, especially when you get to a certain level where decision making should be founded on certain facts. So that's been one thing. The second is the frameworks. There's just, as much as we make fun of consultants and their 2x2s and all their various frameworks, it is helpful when it's a starting place. I'm not suggesting everything can fit into a framework, but it is a way to just get started. Yeah. And to just analyze the cost benefits of everything that you're kind of weighing. And then the third is just giving me personally, the confidence to be able to make decisions or get up to speed in an area that I'm not necessarily the expert at. That's part of being a consultant, is you figure out how much you actually need to know to make an informed decision, and then you just make the decision. And that's sometimes what you need to do when you have so much breadth and scope in a role. Right. So yeah, it's been great.
Whereas now, rather than being a doer, you are in a decision-making role. Probably 80% of your day is just spent making decisions.
Yes, yeah.
So I would imagine that type of background and training, that confidence that you talked about, really helps as you are a leader in an organization.
That's right.
Without giving away too many trade secrets, of course, you mentioned earlier, looking at the next 3 to 5 years at LinkedIn, what are some of the, growth initiatives or maybe just like the special projects you guys are working on?
Yeah. So growth for us, it's going to come in like a variety of different ways. But right now where we're really focused is we really believe that most of our growth is going to come from double downing on our existing customers. So just as a bit of background, LinkedIn has a portfolio of different business lines. We're really fortunate in that way. Not just the consumer side, which I think a lot of folks are more familiar with, but we have a whole portfolio of B2B businesses, and some of them are subscription businesses, and then we have one major media business which sells ads. And we believe that if we, on the B2B side, we double down on our existing customers by proving out customer value, giving away more customer value, that we can actually naturally grow our businesses. And this can come in the form of, improving renewal rates by also having them buy more of the same product, and then also buying a cross line of business, so a little bit more cross-selling. So that's really our focus right now is customer success, customer value, delivery, making sure our customers are matched up with the right solutions, and making sure that they're the right customer as well for LinkedIn. And then once they are our customer, making sure that they're successful on our products. And then from there, growth will naturally come from all those levers that I just mentioned. So that's one thing that we're focused on, like a lot of focus is customer value. The second area, as a consumer internet company, naturally as our platform grows in international markets, we'll see a flywheel effect where we have more members, and therefore our products on the B2B side become more valuable in our international markets. So there's a lot of focus on creating member value as well with engaged members in international markets.
Which markets are you most excited about, or do you think there's like a lot of opportunity in?
Yeah, so I think that everything outside of North America is just, everything's exciting, to be honest, because we can add value. Again, going back to our vision, we can add value to every member of the global workforce. So I think everything is really exciting. Specific regions I think are that are most exciting, at least personally for me, is Europe right now. I think we're seeing a lot of growth there, and there's a lot of opportunity there as well, especially with kind of everything that's going on a macroeconomic basis, that I think we can add a lot of value for a lot of our members that are asking some key questions as it relates to what does it mean next for me as an individual. So, yeah.
We have a few leaders listening that are also in charge of the global team. What are some of the nuances or the challenges of going from North America to Europe?
So often, and I was guilty of this as well, by the way, but a lot of the mistakes that I think global leaders make is just, taking the North America playbook and just porting it over.
We've heard that before.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad mistake, but it's so easy to do given that North America as a region. By the way, North America for the most part is U.S. and Canada, and one language for the most part. Yeah. Similar cultures, whatever, and so it's and it has a massive scale, a lot of GDP, and so it's natural to be like, we got this to scale, so let's scale it even further. And it's not easy to do when you go to international markets. You really do have to think about figuring out how you're going to operate in a subscale manner, and the nuances of language. Language is like a big one, which creates a lot of subscale inefficient. What you would consider inefficiencies when you're starting up, but it's actually a good investment. So that's like one thing. Operating global team also with multiple time zones. I know it sounds like really operational and tactical, but it is hard, right? Thinking about when are you going to have meetings, how are you going to be connected across the globe, and how do you get coordinated? This is where culture and values actually become even more important, right? So even though everyone has their own cultural nuances and cultural identity, I think a corporate culture and a corporate set of values ensures that you can scale decision making and just operations in a way that is consistent globally. Yeah.
So you currently lead a big SDR team. That's like one of the many orgs that you are running, and it represents about 40% of all new business. What are some of the most interesting or most successful strategies that you've been able to deploy with the team to make them as successful in contributing to the business as they have been able to?
Yeah. So the SDR team, it sits in various organizations at different companies. At LinkedIn, it sits in operations, and that means it sits between sales and marketing. And so one of the things that makes it really, what's made us really successful, at least, is having the strong cross-functional collaboration with both our marketing partners and sales partners. And that's like super important to get right, because if you're not on the same page, your operations, and then also the way that you measure the business, and also just how you are coordinated, you're going to become uncoordinated if you're not on the same page. So that's super important. I feel like many times that's not prioritized in other companies. So the partnership has been super important.
I have to ask, because in all the organizations I've been to, it's usually a tug of war of marketing or sales getting SDRs. Why or how did it end up in operations?
It's a good question. So it started in operations by my predecessor, to be honest. And so he started the team probably like a decade ago. And I think it was when we were a lot smaller, a lot more nimble. And it was like, hey, can you do this? And he was able to. And it makes sense in many ways, because if you think about it, it creates a really good bridge between sales and marketing, right? And it creates that focus on, okay, let's focus on cross-functional collaboration versus like just hitting the in-year number or just figuring out kind of the marketing campaigns that will drive more leads. It's really a nice conduit between the two functions. So that's I would actually advocate for it. The other nice thing about having SDRs in operations is it should be an operational machine, right? At its peak, it should be a machine that is able to filter out leads that are not necessarily good context for our sales channel. Maybe it's better for our online channel, or just not actually leads at all, and save time for our sales organization, and then channel that to sales. Get a feedback loop from sales, get a feedback loop from marketing. Like, that's very operational in nature. It's not just about selling. It's about making sure that machine works.
No, it makes sense. I think a lot of times it's the revenue teams are like, no, they're part of the revenue number, so we want them. Or marketing is like, well, they're part of leads, so they should be on our team. And your guys is kind of like, well, let's focus on alignment first and put them in operations. And it kind of forces both sides to come together.
Yes, exactly.
I like that a lot.
Exactly.
How many folks are on the SDR org, so I can give listeners a scale idea?
Yeah, there's about around 350.
350. So the largest I've come in contact with secondhand here. What are some of the challenges of scaling that team? Because I think a lot of folks, I've heard 50 to 100, and that's usually really large. You can tell they really value that department. What were some of the challenges that you guys ran into once you kind of hit that 100+ mark?
So the alignment piece is a big one, right? Even though we say that we're focused on it, it is always going to be a challenge, and we're constantly working on it, especially since we're actually, of the 4 B2B businesses, we support 3 of them, basically are software businesses. So as a result, even though we have pretty large scale, there's always a question of, should we actually be subscale to meet the needs of the specific lines of businesses? Those are like some of the challenges. Some of the other challenges is consistency and quality of our talent. I feel like we're really fortunate to have a great talent pipeline at LinkedIn with great SDRs, but naturally, when you have hundreds of people, like, there's always going to be some folks that are not meeting the bar, and so actively, coaching and performance managing compassionately, so that you are meeting that bar consistently for all lines of businesses and all reps. We're global, so then this is also a question around subscale and like languages, and how do you meet those needs? How do you handle leads that of different languages, and how do you make sure they're routed to the right people? How do you ensure that you have the right capacity? This is like all operational questions, by the way, and again, supporting the whole notion of why SDR should be in operations. Also, by the way, the other thing that SDRs like the organization is supposed to be doing is actually creating a talent pipeline for the sales organization.
Yeah.
Which that in itself is also operational, right? So we're bringing in batches of really high potential undergrads, graduates, along with other folks from various industries and various backgrounds into the SDR team based on their performance, then graduating them into the sales organization, which that's super challenging as you become really large to get that right, to ensure that you're forecasting out a few years out where the talent demand is going to be as well.
Yeah.
You obviously come from a very data-driven analytical background. You're working with a really diverse team, some who may be on that kind of similar mindset and others who may not. How do you get the folks who may not be as data-driven and analytical to see your vision, see your approach, understand like why you may be making certain decisions?
Yeah. So I'll just start by saying LinkedIn is actually extremely data-driven, more so than any organization I've encountered, even like it's as much as like Bain, to be honest, which I'm very fortunate about. But that being said, there's always folks that see things in a different way. And I think before you start with like the hard numbers and the data, I think there's only just getting to a place of can we align on like the key question or the problem statement that we're trying to solve for, and then I would say that's like usually 50% of misalignment issues.
Yeah.
The starting point.
Yeah, the starting point or the question or the burning platform.
this?
Yeah, why are we doing this? Exactly, which is like has nothing to do with data. But data supports whatever arguments you're going to make. But I mean, most of the time people are answering two different questions. So so starting with that's like half the journey. And then after that, it's really explaining how you see the world. And having data support it, not necessarily lead your decision making, but just kind of support your kind of how you're seeing it, and then understanding and listening to how others also see the world. Again, I do think most people support their assertions and their points of view based on data at LinkedIn, and that just comes from again back to the culture that we've created. Also, LinkedIn invests in something called Data Driven University. It's called DDU for short. It's a grassroots program that we created at LinkedIn, started by a bunch of employees, some of whom you actually know. And they created this like training. It's like a 2 to 3 day training. The curriculum is developed by other LinkedIn employees, and it's trained by LinkedIn employees, fellow peers that have a very strong data-driven background, usually have had either consulting training or come from a function that uses a lot of data. And they train employees of a certain level and above. And it's a pretty competitive program to apply to, but a lot of folks find a lot of value in it. And so it's a great investment, and you learn how to think logically or break down problem statements into decision trees or assertion trees. And how do you think about data? How do you analyze data? How do you glean insights? And how do you communicate it? And so it's a huge investment that LinkedIn makes, but it helps because as a result, you have all of these folks throughout the organization of a certain level that are making decisions day to day that have gone through that program. And so there's almost this common language that
Shared
they're speaking.
too, right.
Exactly. And so when you're in a meeting, you might crack a joke like, as we learned in DDU, which is sort of, this is how we should probably think about it, or this is one way to think about it. And, so. Yeah.
Are they taking external applications? Because me and Sheena...
Exactly. In our free time.
I know. Maybe we should start another business line.
Exactly. So do you see a lot of people, even from the sales org, sales leadership, going through this program as well?
Yeah. So it's actually started within the sales organization.
Interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah. So it's it started by with a few folks in cross-functional teams within sales that support sales. It's not necessarily sales leaders, but folks that were either in pre-sales or in sales support or operations that started it and have been actually managing it through time. And then a ton of sales leaders have actually gone through that program, and they found a lot of benefit through it. And now it's expanded to marketing, to HR, to our recruiting organization. So we're pretty inclusive of making sure that everyone has kind of access to that program outside of sales as well.
So we talked a little bit about alignment and partnering with your peers on the sales side and on the marketing side. What are some tactics and some things that you've been able to do to really ensure that successful partnership with sales?
Yeah. So you cannot be successful in operations without a strong partnership with your cross-functional partners. And so in my case, with marketing, with sales, it's super important. And I think it starts with a mutual understanding that you guys are solving for the same thing. And so with sales, we're solving for growth, and we're solving for making sure that the assets that we have, whether it be our budgets or headcount or whatever it may be, are allocated in a way that's efficient so that we can hit our growth targets or actually exceed them. And so having that like mutual understanding, like we're on the same page. We might see things differently to get to that end state goal, but like as long as we're on the same page, like I think that like clears the air for a lot of things in people's intentions, so that helps. So that's really, really helped. Open and honest communication, right, has been really important too. I sometimes feel that ops versus sales, or ops versus marketing, or sales versus marketing, there could be tension, but it's not necessarily communicated. And that actually can get in the way of a lot of progress.
Yeah,
and so,
absolutely.
So open communication that's supported by data, that's supported by this notion of we're on the same team, right?
Yeah.
And this is what I'm seeing, and it's not getting us to our growth numbers. And we're both trying to strive for growth, so let's talk about what's going on here.
Right. That's one of our values as well, is no sugar, but ensuring that open, honest communication and in time, so it's not after the fact and you're pointing fingers, but again, we're here, we want to win as a team. That communication is a huge part of that. Completely agree. So I have been hearing a lot about this role of sales strategy, which I think that probably fits into a big part of what you do as well.
Yeah.
And the importance of that role. I think it's like it doesn't exist in every company. Sales ops has been around for a long time. You're starting to hear about revenue ops, and now sales strategy is maybe overarching all of that.
Yeah.
What is your view on this role of sales strategy, and what does it look like in the coming years?
Yeah, it's so interesting to see the growth of this function in the last, I would say even like 2 to 3 years.
Definitely.
It's pretty incredible. So you're right. It's sometimes called sales strategy, commercial ops, revenue ops. There's just a whole host of different things. But it's becoming more popular, and it makes sense if you think about it. So stepping back, if you think about some industry trends, one is things are like technology is making things a lot more dynamic and more competitive, and a lot more players are coming into the market. And so you just have to be able to pivot pretty quickly. And to do that, you need a really strong operations team, and not someone that's like reacting, or a function that's reacting to the status, but is able to look years out and be like, okay, we got to get to that place.
Yep.
And so you do need a very strong ops function versus just having all of that brain power sit in a sales organization. That sales should be about executing and ensuring that we can meet our kind of in-year targets, but operations should be about more than that, ensuring that we're doing that in year, but also thinking about how we're going to get to the to where we need to be in 2 to 3 years or 5 years. The other thing is, if you think about it, for most companies, sales is like the most expensive line item on their P&L, right? Yeah. And so if you need to ensure that you're effectively using those resources and those investments, you need to be able to have a very strong operations and analytics function to ensure that you're actually getting the most ROI out of that function, and you're ensuring that you are allocating resources in the right way. Do you have the right support resources for your sales organization? Do you have the right salespeople in the right markets? Do you have the right salespeople working on the right products? Those are questions that only you can really answer with data. And that's what an ops function does. And so I think more and more companies are starting to realize that, and the value of that thought partnership with sales and with marketing, and investing more into commercial ops or revenue ops or sales ops, whatever you want to call it.
What do you see as the role of advanced analytics, machine learning, AI in the function of operations?
Yeah, I'm embracing it. It's going to be awesome. But so, operations, we are looking at a ton of data. And actually at LinkedIn, we're looking at even more data because we sit on top of a lot of data as well, right?
Yes.
So, which is so much fun and so great, and it makes us much more productive. But there's a lot that we could be doing faster with things like AI. So, for example, forecasting, we actually do a pretty good job at LinkedIn at forecasting, especially with our subscription businesses. We're very proud of that, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of work, and it's done on a daily, weekly basis. And how cool would it be if we can just have AI kind of tell us like where they see us going? And it's super important to get the forecast right, because again, that helps us drive to where we need to be, next quarter, a year from now, whatever it may be. So we still have to do it, but it'd be awesome to have AI do some of that. We're really embracing automation of a lot of our tasks, a lot of our, especially our back office functions that help support kind of deal flow.
Very cool. Yeah, I think there's so much opportunity there to take away some of that manual, repetitive, and places where there's a lot of data that can inform what is the next step. So that you can spend that effort, your team can spend effort on things that require human cognition and the brains and the smarts that a robot or bot can't solve today.
Right.
So I think in the operations space, it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. I know that you read all these articles about, either companies or functions that are really threatened by that. And I feel like it's actually empowering to have AI and robotics take some of that off our plates, because it just means more bandwidth to do even more interesting stuff, or even take that analysis to the next level, right? And so there's always a ton of work to do. It's just a matter of where do you want to focus your energy.
We all wish we could have more hours back in our day.
Totally.
And I think this is going to make some of that possible.
Totally.
What's the single most important data to keep track of as a sales leader?
That's really hard.
Everybody says that.
That's really hard. So I think it starts with understanding what are your priorities as an organization, right? So sometimes, while it is let's hit our growth numbers or revenue numbers, it's more than that. It's what are our priorities in a certain time frame, and based on that, what is your true north metric, and being really crystal clear on that. And then from that, making sure that you have alignment across the organization, and also have set clear targets. Getting the metric right is more important than anything I can say. And getting that right up front and setting those targets up front, super important to drive your priorities. So rather than one thing, I would say figure out what your priorities are, and then make sure that it's you're tracking progress.
Yeah, that's good.
I love when people give me a better answer than what my question teed up.
Yeah, maybe we should revise our question.
And then the last one we always like to end on is, how would you describe sales in one word?
Dynamic.
Nice. All right, I'll take it. I'm trying to think of some of the last ones. We got challenge. We've had difficult. Two back-to-back, two sales leaders. One said difficult, one said challenge. So kind of same coin, different side a little bit there, but awesome.
They're not being dynamic enough.
Yeah.
With change.
Yeah, right.
To make it less challenging.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lekha. It was really fun to have you here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks.